Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, 10 Tips to Overcome the Training Usage Dip. My name is Jessica. I'm on the marketing team with Biz Library, and I'll be the host for today's session. Before we get started, I want to go through just a couple of housekeeping items. First, what you should see on the screen. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is the webinar viewer. So this is where you'll see the content that we're sharing with you today. On the right-hand side of the screen, this is the control panel. So this is where you can join the audio portion of today's webinar, and you can also communicate with us through the question box. The default mode for the control panel is for it to collapse. If you want to open the control panel back up, simply click the orange box with the white arrow in it, and it'll expand for you. All of today's attendees are in listen-only mode. You can join the audio portion of today's webinar either through the teleconference line. You can also listen through your speakers. If you're going to listen through your speakers, I recommend either using a pair of headphones or a headset to get the best audio quality. We like to keep things pretty informal, so if you have any questions or discussion points throughout today's session, feel free to send those over through the question box located within the control panel. I like to weave the questions in as it relates to what we're discussing in the webinar, and then also leave some time at the end for Q&A. I am recording the webinar today, so I'll make a link to the webinar recording, as well as the slides and follow-up information available on our website after today's session. So that's bizlibrary.com/bizblog. Also, if you'd like to download the slides for today, I put a link to them in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You should have also received a link to the slides in the reminder email that you received this morning. Happy to say that today's session has been approved for 1 hour CE credit for all of you HR professionals attending. I'll make a link to the completion certificate available at the end of today's webinar, and also send out a link to the completion certificate in that follow-up email that you'll receive within 24 hours. The most important thing is the program ID number or the activity ID number. That's what you'll need to record with HRCI. Again, my name is Jessica. I'm on the marketing team with Biz Library, graduated from the University of Missouri Columbia with a degree in journalism. I've been working in the training and development industry now for about 5 years. I'm very active in social media, so I tweet on behalf of Biz Library at Biz Library, and also at my own account at Jess L. Petrie. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, so I like to share a lot of articles and discussions around training and development, human resources, and marketing. So if you're on either of those networks, we'll love it if you'd reach out and connect. Presenting with us today is Chris Osborne. Chris is the VP of Marketing for Biz Library. He's also worked in a consulting capacity with a Paris-based leadership development consulting firm where he helped organizations design and implement leadership and executive development programs. He's been performing learning, development, and training functions formally since 2000 and informally for organizations since 1987. Prior to Chris's move into the business sector, he practiced law in the areas of labor, employment, and business litigation for over 12 years. He graduated from WashU School of Law with honors in 1987. Chris is also active in social media, so you can find him on Twitter at Chris Osborne STL, and he's also on LinkedIn. Just to give you a little bit of background on Biz Library, Biz Library is a leading provider of online employee training and e-learning solutions. The award-winning content library contains more than 7,000 online employee training videos covering various training topics. So that includes things like communication skills, leadership and management, sales and customer service, compliance and safety training, desktop computer skills, and more. Additionally, Biz Library's LMS, or Learning Management System, and Social Learning Technology Platform help our HR and training leaders improve and manage employee learning. All right, so enough about us. I have a quick poll question to kick things off for today, so you should see it pop up on your screen in just a minute. So what is your biggest challenge with training program participation? Is it A, lack of time or perceived value, B, lack of easy-to-access learning resources, C, no manager or leadership support, D, lack of awareness, or E, something else?
Hey, Jessica, how you doing?
Hey, Chris, I'm great. How are you?
Well, I'm just fine, actually. I'm
Good.
excited to present this webinar for the very first time today.
Yeah, it is. It's a new webinar for us, although a lot of the key tips and best practices we've included in some of the other webinars, but it's the first time all of them have been compiled into one webinar. So hoping that everyone finds some value in what we're talking about today.
Good way to make it seem like we actually know what we're talking about. Thank you. No, you're right. We've actually talked about these all these challenges in various webinars, and you and I were, talking about this and realized that this would make actually, I think, a helpful series of tips to compile. So I'm anxious to get into this and hear what everybody thinks as we get into this, get through the content today. But should be fun. I'm anxious.
Yeah, and again, we like to keep things really informal. So if you have questions or comments or discussion points, send those over through the question box. I like to weave it in as it relates to what we're discussing. It also helps us make the webinar better for future attendees. So we certainly appreciate feedback and participation. All right, so it looks like we've got 75% have participated in the poll so far, so I'm going to go ahead and close it out and share the results with everyone. So it looks like we've got 55% or 56%, excuse me, said lack of time, perceived value. 19% said no manager or leadership support. 11% said something else. 7% said lack of easy access, and 7% said lack of awareness.
Yeah. So those of you who said something else, let us know what that is. We'd love to hear about that. But wow, a lot of people said lack of time or perceived value. And we see that challenge over and over with our clients too. And ultimately, that is the biggest challenge that I experienced when I was trying to convince people to participate in development opportunities. There's a whole range of reasons that pops up. Maybe somebody had a bad experience of training before, and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to do this again, or there's just a whole range of reasons that can happen. So the underlying causes of that can be as varied as the individuals that may answer that way. But I think if you kind of buy into some of the tips that we're going to give you today, actually, a lot of them are really aimed right at getting over that one, plus building this manager and leadership support, which are critical, ultimately critical to the success of any program. So I think we can get you there.
Yeah, so there are two high-level things that we hope that you take away from today, Chris. So, Chris, I'm going to pass the ball to you, and you can introduce those and keep going. Screen looks good.
Okay. Yep. Okay, good. I'm sorry. I had to mute myself there very briefly. All right, so Jessica's right. We have two high-level things. We want to talk to you a little bit about something that Jessica, we were just talking about this before we started the webinar too, as a matter of fact, about how similar training and marketing really are. And we want to share our experiences about how we came to that realization. But we have 10 tips and best practices, and they're not complicated. But when you weave them all together, they can really be powerful in terms of overcoming sort of this dip in usage of these problems that many organizations run into, overcoming resistance to really getting things going. So this will really help you implement and increase participation, which will increase the value and benefits that you deliver. So really think you can, well, hopefully we'll get a lot out of this. So let's just jump in and get to this. All right, so there we go. Had trouble seeing my screen very well there. Well, I mentioned earlier, I mentioned the first thing we want to talk about is how similar training and marketing are. And in many ways, they really are peas in a pod. And we didn't come to this realization immediately or overnight, or it wasn't something that we just went, wow. This was something that really dawned on the two of us over time. Jessica and I have been working together since January of 2011, and the more we get into this and the more we start to work with the market and clients and it just a whole range of different things, it just become so apparent that the two disciplines are really a lot alike. And if you think about the objectives of training and the objectives of marketing, both disciplines are about helping people move from point A to point B. So in marketing, what we're trying to do is we're presenting a product or a service, and we're trying to motivate people to absorb or buy the product or service, point A to point B. In training, we we have employees or an organization who are performing at a certain level, and we have to convince them to absorb or participate in the training, because to do so will help them perform at a higher level. In other words, to go to point B. So we have to do a lot of the same things. We have to deliver a value proposition. We have to do it effectively. We have to find a target audience. We have to find a message that's effective. So a lot of the principles and a lot of the ways we execute are really, really similar. And I can't tell you when I had an aha moment on this, but it definitely resonates with me. Jessica, did you have a specific aha moment, or was it for you the same as me? Was it something that dawned on you over time?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the biggest parallels to me are the way that both of the disciplines have evolved over time. So if you think about, so I studied advertising and journalism through college, and then did some marketing before I worked with Biz Library and Learning and Development. But if you think about the way that, if you think about kind of, just to give you a super boring advertising kind of a lesson, but it was all based on push. So we're going to sell you this, come get it. Everyone wants this, kind of like this propaganda kind of advertising, or selling a feeling or an emotion or something. So it was very much for pushing this message on to you. And if you think about how training was and learning and development was, it was very much, we're pushing this training and development on you. So we're expecting you to take this class at this time because we say that this is best for you. And look at it now. So the way that marketing has evolved, it's inbound marketing. So we're working to educate our clients and our customers, help them make smarter decisions. And in the same way, we've become more facilitators of learning and development rather than pushing that onto our employees or our clients or whoever we're working to train.
Yeah, good analogy. I agree completely. So as you're thinking about, so keep that analogy in mind as you think through these three questions. These are real foundational questions that we would ask as we're getting a training program, an employee development program, organized and pulled together to really drive sort of foundational business results. What are our business challenges and goals for growth? I mean, what is it we're trying to do? And what's standing in our way? And how does the specific training solution fit into that overall development strategy for the business? And do we have a clear definition of success? So how do we define it? What's success going to look like for us as an organization? And by extension, what will employee development and training programs look like when they're successful? And so once you kind of get a handle on how to answer each of these three questions, you can begin to build that marketing message to employees to convince them, say, hey, if you'll participate with us, we can help get you there. Jessica, this is a fascinating development, I think, in Biz Library's evolution as a training and development company and working with our clients. I'm going to let you explain this because this is a really interesting approach to client success.
Right. So if you think about it, so many times you're wondering, where do I get started, or what can I expect from launching a new training program, or whether it's specific to something that's online or if it's another initiative. So this is the way that we've approached it at Biz Library. So we look at these different aspects, and it's really a data-driven process to score clients and help them see what is the health of their program, and then how we can help them move forward and what they can expect. So if you look at some of these key points that we're looking at, so utilization. So many times when you're looking at measuring the impact of a training and development program, people kind of look down on if you're just measuring usage. But you can't get anywhere if your employees aren't using the resources that you're providing them, and you have no participation or usage as a foundation point, then you can't get anywhere else. So it's really a foundation and a base point, and it's obviously the topic of what we're talking about today. And then some of these other things that are involved, manager and leadership involvement, having a marketing strategy in place. So I guess you didn't really realize when you were coming into your training and development role, or if you've been in it for a while, that you're actually going to be in marketing as well. So there's all these different points that give you some aspect of what you can look at to measure your program. We say that about the average number of users launching or completing a course within 90 days is usually about between 20 and 30%. So if you're looking at you have a brand new program in place, that's what you could benchmark.
Yeah, good stuff. And again, this is a great model that we have to help clients understand how success works. Okay, so how do we get there? That's how we define success. Here are the factors that we're going to use to measure it. So have that 40% of our client success score is based upon utilization. So we deem it as extremely important. We recognize that if you're going to invest in training and development, you expect participation, you expect people to absorb the content you're putting in front of them. How do you drive utilization? Well, here are 10 tips that are tried and true. We know these work, and we've put them in this order for a reason, which we'll talk about as we get through this, but here they are. Communicate based on what's in it for me. In other words, communicate on the employee's terms. Explain to the employee what's in it for the employee. Understand the employee's motivation and drive. And then we want to make sure that the program that you've developed is aligned to business goals and objectives. You have to get your managers on board to deliver the goods. Then we have to understand the structural barriers and challenges in your organization so that you can, all of those first 4 pieces will come into play to overcome them. And now we have to build a marketing plan, which requires us to find our super learners and tell great stories. Then we have to communicate, 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 and repeat the communication. There's an old marketing saw called the rules of 3s and 11s, and that really comes into play there. Then we want to measure the communication and communicate the impact of the entire program. So this gets back to, the whole piece of it. And last but not least, want to make sure we're targeting our marketing efforts at the appropriate people in the appropriate way using the appropriate methodologies. Okay, so let's jump into each one of these tips and start with the first one, the old-fashioned WII-FM radio. What's in it for me? This is one of these business communication phrases or terms, whatever you want to call it, that's almost kind of, at one point it was, front and center, then it kind of fell out of favor. But this really ultimately is so critical, and we lose sight of this so often because, we've got this corporate investment, company-wide investment in training and development. We have these big budgets. We have people who are charged with delivering organizational results. We have training strategies. We have learning management systems. But none of it works. None of that works unless we engage the employees. And you engage the employees one person at a time. And we sometimes lose sight of this. And this is again where marketing and training are so alike. If you think about the greatest marketing campaigns, just business-to-consumer marketing campaigns out there, they resonate with individuals, and they're successful because an individual reacts to a campaign and takes action, one person at a time. They buy one car at a time, or one pair of shoes at a time, or they absorb a meal one person at a time. And through the sheer dint of repetition, the sheer dint of the volume, the program's successful because it resonated with an audience, one person at a time, because there was something in it for the individual on some level. And we have to think about our training the same way. We can't, as Jessica was pointing out earlier, we can't push things to people anymore. People don't buy products that way. They're not absorbing information that way away from work. We have to make it possible for people to pull information to themselves when they need it, what they need, on their own terms, on their own devices even. So we have to make it clear that the training program we've put together has something of value for each employee. What's in it for me? Which means we have to identify our target audience. So if we have sales training, what's in it for the sales rep? Specifically, what's in it for Phil or Sarah? Sarah may need help with written communication training, with written communications. Phil may need help just closing deals. So do we have content that's in it for each of them? What's our target audience? For our HR representatives, what's specifically in it for our, employee relations folks, our recruiters? What do we have for them? So we want to create messaging that connects the learner and the purpose of the learning. Adults will move mountains for you in your workplace if they understand the purpose of what you're doing. Tell them why you need things done, and they'll do it, but they need to understand the why. Don't assume they know. Take the time to explain and be consistent, provide motivation, and remember, people have natural inherent incentives to do well. People want to perform. They want to do well. So make it possible for that to happen. So think about it this way. As you're thinking about stating a learning objective, so this is, on the left-hand side, this is a standard learning objective, and I will be very honest, I wrote that back when I used to deliver sexual harassment training many, many moons ago. So think about which set of learning objectives are most likely to make your employees feel engaged about compliance training. The standard learning objective, which I understand the law of harassment and discrimination. Well, that is actually one of the objectives of harassment training, isn't it? But look at the learning objective on the right, an employee-focused learning objective. Explain and demonstrate behaviors that contribute to a productive and safe work environment for everyone. Which objective is employee-facing, and which one is more likely to get the attention of the employees and make them feel like you're speaking to them, you're delivering value to the employees? It's certainly not the first one. I also wrote the one on the left here, came from the same training program, actually. Here's the standard learning objective. Learn how managers and supervisors can be held individually liable for employee claims of a hostile work environment or other form of sexual harassment. I slipped into my former attorney mode for that training program, embarrassed to admit. But here's the same objective stated from an employee perspective. Show how we can help each other feel valued as contributors to organizational success. Again, which objective expresses value in the employees and makes it clear there's something in it for the employee, not just for the organization? This is how we have to think about even compliance training. We can do this. It takes time, it takes some thought, but we can do it. Jessica, I love this quote that you found. I'm going to let you go through this quote for us because I've read this and you gobsmacked me with this quote. I thought this is wonderful. So explain where you found it and why this appealed to you, please.
Sure, happy to. So if you're looking for a good website, one I like is switchandshift.com. So I read and research a ton, so this is one of my favorites. I think the tagline's connecting humans and business or something like that. But there's a lot of contributors, a lot of great content out there. So this quote comes from the article, The Employee Trinity, engaged, happy, and motivated. So a happy employee is not necessarily an engaged employee, and an engaged employee is not necessarily a happy one. But we have found that to win in the marketplace, you must first learn what makes your employees want to be in your workplace. So it gets,
great quote.
Right. So it really gets down to understanding just because someone is happy or maybe someone seems engaged, but you really have to understand what that motivation and drive is. So what is it that makes them happy? What is it that makes them engaged and want to really be where they're working for your organization? So what is that internal motivation or value that's connecting them to your organization? What's connecting them to want to do better? What's connecting them to want to do better professionally and develop themselves professionally?
Perfect. Absolutely perfect, which gets right to this next piece of our 10 tips, which is understand what motivates and drives your employees to be there. And This is, again, this is from a different article that Jessica found. Jessica, I have to compliment you. Your research for this webinar was outstanding. I'll let you identify the article, and I want to comment on these 6 elements, and then I'm going to let you have an opportunity to comment too. But I really love the positive thoughts motivate, enjoyment motivates, feeling important motivates, success motivates. I mean, think about times in your career. I mean, just reflect on these thoughts, this way of framing motivation and drive for a second, and think about times in your personal career when you've really performed at a high level. And you're going to probably find these elements in one way or another present. It's certainly true for me. When I read through this, I'm kind of like, wow, this really resonated for me. And I'll use my time here at Biz Library as an example. I mean, it's not all been a bed of roses, but when we've really hit on all cylinders as a team, this has really been true for me, feeling, like what I'm doing is important to the company and to my team and to my colleagues. It was enjoyable because we're finding new and interesting ways to do things, and it was great for me and my family to be in a cool place. And, we were successful, and we weren't focusing on, what we weren't doing well. We were looking at ways to improve, and we had real clarity of purpose around what we were doing and why we were doing it. This is a really, really outstanding way to think about creating a model of motivation. So, Jessica, this obviously appealed to you too. What was it about this that drew you to this piece of information in this article?
Well, really, the biggest takeaway is how you can apply these principles of motivation to your training and development. So if you think of, so I'll help kind of apply some of these to our training and development program. So if you think about positive thoughts, so how could you apply the principle of positive thoughts to motivating your employees? So when your organization reaches maybe their learning goals, share that success. So if an individual team reaches their learning goals, share that success. Thank individuals for being part of this success, whether if you do bravos or if you do shout outs or kudos. If you have some sort of employee recognition program, make sure that your training and development is a part of that and that you're communicating that to everyone. The idea of enjoyment motivating, so find out what people like to do. And have them do tasks that they enjoy, or building social learning activities into your training and development. Everyone likes free food, so how maybe you do a kickoff for your training and development program that incorporates free food. Not that you always have to incorporate something that's going to cost a lot of money, but just understanding what people like. Feeling important motivates, so ask for feedback, ask for people's opinions, maybe through a survey or a course evaluation. Within Biz Library courses we work in, allowing users to rate and leave comments, so they're able to give you that feedback, and they feel important. They feel like their input is important as well. The idea that success motivates, so set clear and reasonable goals, have those outlined at the beginning so that their employees know what's expected of them. Have certain stakeholders or your managers help to set those goals and understand what the goals mean, and then agree to them. And then again, thank the individuals for contributing to the group success. Understanding how personal benefits motivate, so identify and communicate how employees can personally gain from participating in the learning program. So again, not that you have to have a specific course or training program for each employee, that's just not scalable, but making sure that your message hits on these key motivators or key things that are driving your employees.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Another great illustration, but this is so true. This is exactly what this is about. You find ways to promote success. And there's a whole range of ways to do it. You can use fun images, videos, testimonials, whole range of ways to do it. And again, you're really only limited by your own imagination in this regard. It works. There's no other way to put it. It works. Okay, so the third of the 10 tips, align your program to organizational goals and objectives. We see strategically, Harvard Business School has published some incredible research about how frequently organizations fail to achieve organizational goals and objectives, and it's a stunning numbers. Like 80% of organizations fail to achieve any strategic goals. And there's a whole range of reasons for it, but it is a common failure. And one of the reasons is that they treat alignment as if it were something static, and it cannot be, particularly when you're dealing with human behaviors and human development and training and learning. Just step back and think about what's going on in the marketplace today. Are the training and development needs of your employees the same today that they were 12 months ago? Are they going to be the same in 6 months or 9 months? The answer is no, they will not. So alignment, when you're thinking about alignment and employee development, you have to accept the responsibility that alignment means it's a process of continuous adjustment so that you are continually looking at where you are in terms of performance and where your employees need help, where they need to improve their performance, what their development needs really are in order to achieve your organizational objectives. So it's an ongoing work with every important stakeholder, your managers, your employees, your senior leaders, your senior development, and what's happening in the marketplace to make sure that you're delivering content to your employees that actually helps promote where your organization needs to go. So you're identifying your target audience all along the way. You want to make sure that you're connecting and moving the needle in the right way that is really linked to what's happening in real time as events dictate. Again, don't think of alignment as something static. Think of alignment as a process requiring ongoing adjustment, and you're much, much more apt to hit your objectives. Okay? So the fourth of the 10 tips, get your managers on board. This is really important. There's some great data published by Barbara Carnes that links the manager as the most important stakeholder in the success of employee training. It's stunning, but it's really, really true. You got to have your managers bought in before training programs start. You have to have your managers' involvement after you train. They have to support what you're doing. They have to know how to reinforce training. This is really important. And how do you get them involved? You have to explain what's in it for them. You know, I wish human beings were motivated always more altruistically, but we're not. It just isn't. We're motivated frequently by things that help us, by things that make our lives easier. That's okay. That's totally normal. So help your managers understand that when their employees demonstrate increased levels of productivity, increased skill, when they work at a higher level of morale, when they are working more effectively, it reflects well on the manager. And show the manager how important employee recognition is, going back to those motivators, you know, positive reinforcement, you know, happy employees, how to show them how to do those things. It increases creativity. Just all kinds of incredible benefits flow from manager engagement and involvement at every level, at every stage of employee development. It is a stunning, stunning increase you can see in the impact of your training program and the velocity of improved performance when you get your managers on board. It's just an amazing, amazing bit of improvement you can see. One of the disconnects, you know, we're talking about that strategic alignment, getting management really to buy into what's going on. One of the strategic disconnects that we see over and over and over when we start to talk to organizations about what's happening in training and development and what they want to see happening in training and development is illustrated in this chart. This was written by Jack Phillips, Patty and Jack Phillips. It was published in CLO magazine in December of 2010. And I haven't seen anything yet published more recently that contradicts this. The title is How Executives View Learning Metrics. And in the left-hand column, it's how ranked in the importance of executives, top to bottom. This is a forced rank. And in the far right-hand column, it illustrates how many organizations are currently measuring these things. The most critical thing to senior executives is that the training program has actual impact, but only 8% of organizations are actually measuring that. And that middle column is the Kirkpatrick Phillips methodology. The second to executives is value. Only 4% of organizations are getting there. Activity, 94% of organizations measure activity, but it's unimportant. Ranked sixth. So there's a big disconnect between what a lot of learning professionals are actually measuring and what matters, and we've got to change this. We have to start really thinking carefully about how to measure the impact if we want senior leadership to really get behind what we're doing, which gets to this next slide, understanding barriers, objections, and challenges. We asked you at the beginning of today's webinar what were some of the biggest, what was the biggest challenge or barrier in your organization, and there were two of them that were identified as really huge in this. And one was about not enough time. The other, Jessica, you have to go check. I don't remember the exact percentage. It was 19% maybe, was executive or senior leadership support. So those were huge, huge barriers. So how do you get around that? So here are some examples of the barriers, and how do you get around this? Okay, so no help. So this is a big. So here's some success strategies. I love the third one here. Not enough time. So how do we get around this? How do we get around that? But we can focus on just-in-time learning, search and learn opportunities, or all kinds of tools that we can get. 19%, thank you, Jessica, was lack of support. Providing job aids. We can do a whole range of things with kickoff events, a whole range of other strategies that we can adopt to get around that. Jessica, I've been going on. I've gotten through 5 of the 10. Are there any questions that make sense for us to take as we kind of get into this here a little bit?
We do have one question from, let me scroll back up. It's from Deborah. She asked, do you believe in the expectancy theory, Chris?
Well, let me explain what, Deborah, I tell you what, let me give you what I understand the expectancy theory to be. So I make sure that at least you and I are on the same page, and Deborah, chime in if I don't state this correctly. But the expectancy theory basically holds that people either choose to behave or act in certain ways because they're motivated to do so because that's sort of what's expected of them in group situations. If we expect, so use the work as an example, if we're expecting people to be honest and be on time and behave certain ways, then that's typically how how that'll work. If on the other hand our expectation is they're going to be dishonest and lazy, then their behaviors are going to match the expectancy. I think that's, if I understand the theory correctly, that's what you're saying. I think there's something to it. I've always believed pretty strongly that if you treat people like adults, in other words, if you expect adult behavior, you're going to get adult behavior back. So I think that if you lay out a set of expectations, but most importantly, model the behaviors in line with the expectations that you've communicated related to training and development, a commitment to continuous improvement, a commitment to continuous learning, more often than not, you're going to get your employees to do the same thing. So yes, I think there is something to it. Does it hold for every employee? Probably not, but I do believe there's something to it, yes. So Deborah, let us know in chat if I got your understanding of the theory correct. But yeah, I do think there's something to it. Jessica, any other questions
No, just to get back to this, understanding your barriers, objections, or challenges. So these aren't, they'll be different for different organizations and different leaders. So these are just an example of some that are most common. So yours may be slightly different. Again, there's not enough time. I think that so many times we focus on training and development as an event or a program or something that's going to be a disruption from our day-to-day. So if that's a huge objection or a challenge for you, think about ways that you can weave that into the day-to-day work of the employee. We had one of our clients did, so they have mostly call center employees. So the biggest challenge with them is actually taking time away from the phones. Like their entire job is to be on the phone. So how do we take them away and still be productive? So what they did, that they called it tag training. So basically, one employee would take 5 to 10 minutes. Everyone was taking the same video course, and it was an entertaining course that had a key takeaway, but it was still a nice break from the day. But so one employee would take the video, then they would tag their cube neighbor, and then they would watch the video for 5 to 10 minutes. So it weaved it into the day, and it wasn't a huge disruption, and it allowed them to make time for training. So think about it creatively. So maybe instead of emphasizing it as an entire program, emphasize the fact that it's just in time and it's not a huge disruption. It can be worked into your day-to-day work.
Just like that's a great example. I love that story too, because it's a good illustration of, we don't have to have a one-size-fits-all solution to this, and there is room for creativity and a way to find solutions that work specifically for your organization. And that's also a great illustration of how to get your manager, because the managers were heavily involved in that, leading the discussions and helping to select the courses. But yeah, that's a great use case on how that specific organization found enough time for their employees to do it in a way that didn't disrupt the regular flow of their workday. So it's good stuff. Okay, so the sixth of the 10 tips, and we'll recap these tips here before we're done, is to create a marketing plan. Several years ago, I attended a conference, and this lady walked in, trainer, professional trainer. There was 80 or 90 of us in the room, and she was the technical training director for ITT. And her very first line was, "I'm not in training, I'm in marketing." And it was a real kind of like, whoa, okay. And her whole approach was the hard part of her job began after they got their training platform up and running, after they got their curriculum designed, and after they got courses assigned and got all of their people enrolled in the learning management platform. She said that's when the hard work started, was then getting people convinced to use the tool. And she said it was nothing more than a standard straight-up marketing challenge. And she said that's all her team spent their time doing from that point forward. So there were some, training issues and things that they had to deal with, but primarily from that point forward, it was about usage, utilization, and explaining the value and the why of marketing, of training rather. And it's a marketing challenge. And she was just very upfront about it. And it was a provocative but very eye-opening session for a lot of the people in the room. Now, I had been on that path for a while. I was in marketing here at Biz Library, but it's true. Think about your challenges, getting employees engaged in your training. You do the fun stuff, all the fun work is building the content, identifying the content, putting all this great stuff together. For us that are passionate about employee training, that's the fun stuff. And it's kind of like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. It's not true. They don't come. We have to then roll up our sleeves and slog through the hard work of convincing people to come. So there's 3 phases. We have to market before we release content, before we put courses together, before we launch an initiative. We have to market at the release when something happens, and we have to market after something is released and after it. Think about the marketing that you see around programs, television programs. We just got done watching the World Series, and you saw all the programming around the Fox shows that were not yet released or about to be It's the same thing. Pre-release marketing, at-release marketing, post-release marketing. They do it for movies. They do it for It's the same thing with training. Pre-release, at release, you have to do the same thing. You have to raise awareness, set expectations beforehand. You have to motivate them to participate. You have to celebrate success. You keep the momentum going and support continuous improvement. Different challenges and different purposes at each step along the way, but it's important to keep it going all along the way. This is a sort of a sample of what a marketing plan can look like. So you want to think about the purpose of each step along the way, and what's the right method? You know, you probably have all kinds of different communication methodologies throughout your organization. It could be daily emails, newsletters, it can be leaflets that you leave in desks, it can be videos that you put on your corporate intranet site, whole range of things that you can do. Again, you're only limited by your own imagination here, but think of the way information flows in your organization. How do you announce important initiatives? Use the same flow, and don't forget the informal flow of information in your organization too. Tap into that as well. That's important. Okay, I want to tell you a story, and as a way to illustrate this next piece. In 1748, there was this British politician and aristocrat named John Montagu, and he used a lot of his free time playing cards. Now, one of the problems he had was that he greatly enjoyed eating snacks while he played cards, and he wanted to keep one hand free while he ate a snack and one hand for the cards, obviously. So he came up with this idea to eat beef between slices of toast, which would allow him to finally eat and play cards at the same time. And eating his newly invented snack, he named it after his title, which was he was the 4th Earl of Sandwich. And it became one of the most popular meal inventions in the entire Western world. So the sandwich was invented so some rich English guy could play cards and eat at the same time. Now, you'll probably remember that, but that's an example of how a silly little thing with a fun little story can be memorable. Now, we could have put bullet points up and told you something, or storytelling is a great way to teach, and storytelling is a great way to get people involved in training. Think about the story that Jessica told you a little while ago about the company that did the tag training. You know, it's memorable. Tag, you're it. Now you do this. Now you do the training. Tag, you're it. Now you do the training. And find stories, success stories of employees that have learned something and then applied it in your organization, and get those super learners and their stories out there. Use stories in your marketing as you begin to spread the word. Stories are incredibly powerful. It is a great way to spread information. And then we communicate, we communicate, we communicate, and we do it some more. I get frustrated here at Biz Library. We have a social learning platform. We call it Community. We put information out there, and it makes me nutty when we put stuff out there and people say, well, I didn't see that, or we've all had that happen to us. We've sent emails, we've sent communications, and we send it once, and we expect people to remember it. They don't, and they're not going to. It's a normal human behavior. Like I said, there's that old saw, that old marketing saying, the rules of 3s and 11s. It takes 3 times to see something to make an impression, 11 times to prompt action. That's why we see the same commercial so many times. It's the same basic thing with training, and communication's about training. It's why we have to communicate over and over and over in different ways and different methodologies and modalities, and get information in front of people. In marketing, we call that top-of-mind advocacy. So we want to stay top of mind. We want to stay front and center with our employees. So find new and interesting ways to communicate, but do it repeatedly. Just roll up your sleeves, get your thick skin on, be prepared to be patient, and communicate. But just get committed to it. Make it regular, routine, and do it over and over and over. It's the only way to do it. There is no shortcut to this. There is no shortcut. You just have to do it. So here's an anatomy of a pretty good marketing email. You just want to make sure that you get this out quickly. Images are very helpful. You want to make sure the image is high in the email. The headline has to make a quick, easy impression. You want to make sure that the subject line gets the message opened. It's got to be catchy and short, okay? Body text has to be also very short, no more than 3 or 4 sentences in length, and you need to have a call to action. Log in and take a course today, something quick and snappy. There's a lot of good resources online about marketing emails. Go read them, go find them, and use the same principles to market using email your training program. Just think of these as marketing emails, and it's exactly what you want to do. You need a headline, a body text, state the reasons why you want to do it, and a quick, simple, easy call to action. Jessica, anything to add to that?
No, I think it's good. You have the slides so you can look at it more closely, but it's kind of one thing that I would add is that back to the idea of multiple messages. So most of us communicate via email. It's pretty much the standard. That's why I always get so frustrated when our inboxes are blowing up. But if you think about different ways that you can communicate, maybe it's just from different people in your organization. So maybe their employees are always used to getting emails from HR and training. Maybe you consider sending an email. Maybe you send an email. Maybe there's an email from the manager of the employee that's going to be participating in the training. And then maybe you have a message or an email or a video from the CEO or president of your organization that's advocating for the program or the training. So it doesn't always have to be a totally different method of communicating, but maybe it's just from a different person or it has a slightly different message and feel than they're used to.
Exactly. That's a great point, Jessica. Then the 9th of the 10 tips, you want to measure and communicate the impact of the training. People like to be involved in successes. So as things are starting to improve, communicate the improvement. You know, remember early on we talked about, you want to know what success looks like? Well, communicate the success stories. Tell people, look, we were trying to improve client retention from 85 to 87%, and we're at 87 and 20.25% as a direct result of the training that this team has undergone. Hooray, let's celebrate. I mean, communicate this. I mean, this is important stuff, but you have to have understood how to measure it and then communicate the impact that the training has had. Remember, what's in it for me? Employee performance is going to improve, and so you want to make sure that you are communicating it. And this is a great way to do it. You want the annualized savings. This is exactly what we're talking about here. You're going to have access to these slides, but this is exactly what we're talking about. This can be communicated in an email. This can be communicated in a newsletter, any sort of communication tool. But what makes measurement so potent is its capacity to instigate informed action, to provide the opportunity for people to engage in the right behavior at the right time. Again, adults want to do well. We need to give them information that they can use to make wise choices, and they'll do it. And again, if you build it, they will come doesn't work in training. We have to market, and we have to target our marketing efforts. So you have to make sure that you're getting the right message to the right people at the right time. And if you do that, you've got a great chance to hit a home run. This is a little marketing piece that Jessica put together. I love this. A smart way to start your day. Why not learn something new, a little 10-minute video. But again, you're only limited by your own imagination with this stuff. Here are some very creative, visually interesting pieces that you can use to emphasize the training. Another great marketing piece. Again, you're going to have access to these, which you can use and adapt if you want to. Really great stuff. So the whole trick to this thing, 10 tips. Communicate based on what's in it for me. Understand what motivates and drives your employees. Align your program to goals. Get your managers on board. Understand the barriers and challenges. Create a marketing plan. Find your learners and tell stories. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Measure and communicate the impact, and target your marketing efforts. And remember, keep your employees at the center of your efforts and understand how similar training and marketing are, and you're going to be in great shape. Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap up, and I'm going to open up the question pane, and we may have a minute for a question or two.
All right, Chris, sounds good. Again, send over any additional questions into the question box located within the control panel. I have a couple of recommended resources for today's attendees. This first one is called Cutting Edge cutting-edge communication success at work building employability skills. This is really targeted to your new hire employees or very entry-level employees, but it helps build that foundation of why professional development is important. It's a newer course that we have. It's from a series that I really enjoy from the Cutting Edge Communication series. It's almost like the office setting, and then put into training videos. But again, it emphasizes why professional development is important, why communicating your goals and your goals for professional development is important as well. And this next one is, it's actually from a new series developed by Biz Library called Creating Great Business Videos. This one focuses on the new learner. So this one is important to you in two ways. First one, the series is awesome. It helps you to create videos. Videos can be a great mode of communication and can be really impactful. So even if you're just communicating to your employees internally, why not create a whole branded training video for your training and development program? So that would be a cool thing to roll out. And this video specifically includes some good tips for how new learners take in and absorb information. So those two are great videos that I recommend for all the attendees in today's session. These courses and more are all included within the Biz Library collection. So there's over 7,000 videos and e-learning courses included in the collection. So that includes 25 different topic areas, both soft skills and hard skills, desktop computer skills, communication skills, pretty much anything you need to do training on. And it's set up to where employees get unlimited access. So if you want to try out the videos I recommended today or any of the other courses, just let me know. I'll put a quick poll up. I'll leave it up throughout questions, and you can do a free 30-day no-risk trial. All right, Chris, so that being said, we did get some questions in. So if there's one you want to start with, we can, or I can also grab one for you.
Actually, there is one. Stephanie asked a question that I'd like to take first, if you don't mind.
Yep, sounds perfect.
Yeah, so she said, when you complete the training, what are some tools or tips to make sure that the employee is retaining what they have learned? Stephanie, that is one of the most critical challenges that all of us face in training and development, because ultimately it's training retention and then application of learning to improve job performance that is what delivers the return on investment and the business benefits, right? That's the key. So it is really getting your managers to understand very clearly what they need to do to support your employee learning and development. That's a big, big piece of this. So there's a whole range of different things that have to happen to make that work. So one, you have to make sure you understand clearly the actual performance improvement needs of the employees. That's the first thing. Second, you have to have content targeted to plug those specific performance gaps. Then in terms of your manager involvement, they have to help you identify those performance gaps ahead of time, and the managers then have to give employees a chance to apply what they've learned as soon as possible after they've learned it, and managers have to give positive reinforcement and coaching along the way. And that's where we as learning professionals have to be really, really engaged with our managers, give them the tools they need to do that, provide online support and training, and really get there in the trenches with our managers so they know how to do those things. That's really extremely important piece of this.
There was a question up here from Share. So how do you respond to managers who think training and development is focused on only soft skills, and perhaps those skills aren't valued?
Well, some training and development is focused on soft skills, but if you think about everything we do in business is on some level soft skills related. When we sell, we're communicating. When we're talking today, we're communicating, right? Interpersonal reactions have to do with soft skills, emotional intelligence, the problem-solving skills, the communications. But ultimately, improvement in soft skills manifests itself in behaviors. And those behaviors all drive results of some sort. So think about if I get better at, if I'm a sales rep, and my soft skills at communicating with prospects improve to the point that I'm able to move more deals from prospect to proposal to contract to sale, that's very measurable. So you have to look at the behaviors that the soft skills help improve and find ways to measure the impact of the behaviors. That's how you're going to get to a way to measure it.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. This one's from Leah. So what are some motivators customers have shared with you that were successful?
Oh, Leah, great question. And we're actually going to have some video online pretty soon on this very point. But some of the motivators that we see that work really well are opportunities for professional growth and development, the ability to select their own courses, the ability to choose from a wide library of courses based upon what they need when they need it. Those are all things that have worked really, really well for our clients. Did you lose my audio, Jessica?
No, I hear you just fine.
Okay, I think we're in pretty good shape. I think we're right up on time now.
All right, I'll go ahead and wrap up. So for those of you that are attending for HRCI credit, put a link in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You should be able to click on that link, and then you can save the certificate. Again, I'll also email out a link to the recording, webinar slides, and the certificate within 24 hours. You should actually get that in your inbox around 4 p.m. Central Time today. I post the recording slides and follow-up information also on our blog, so that's bizlibrary.com/bizblog. Some of the upcoming webinars we have this week, Thursday, is Onboard Not Overboard, Accelerating New Hire Training. Next week is 5 Barriers to Effective Training Programs and How to Crush Them. So I hope you'll join us for a future session. All the upcoming webinars are on our website at bizlibrary.com/webinars. Again, thanks so much for attending with us today. Thank you for all the great questions. You'll get a survey after today's session, so just let us know if you have any feedback. And thank you, Chris, for presenting.
Yeah, thanks everybody for attending. We really appreciate it.